Today we're going to talk about something a little different. Is what I think is the biggest problem when investing in fractional real estate online on some of the sites where there is decentralized management, meaning where all the individual owners get to make decisions, by vote for what to do, as opposed to the ones where there's, the platforms where you just have a professional manager or company that's actually making all the important decisions and for you. But yeah, what's up, YouTube? It's Joe Catchpolia sitting on the couch as usual, trying to make some money investing in fractional real estate online. But today I was just looking at a property that I bought some tokens from months ago. This is one of the first ones I bought on Lofty, 5401 Odom Ave. I have a video when I went through and did the due diligence on this and the thoughts I had about the property then. If you watch that video, I'll put a link in the description below with that video, along with the other links I usually put, which are to the, some of the bonus money that you can get from signing up for some of these sites. But in any case, if you watch that video, you'll see, I think I bought 27 tokens then at $35 a piece. Since then, I picked up a few more tokens when they came up cheap, and so my cost basis is a little bit lower. One of the annoyances I have with this site is their cost basis doesn't include the fees that you pay, and so my basis is really it's higher than this. It's probably closer to, I don't know, it's at least a couple bucks higher than that, but it is still, I think, relatively low compared to the value. If you remember when I did this video, or if you went back and watched it, I talked about how we got these tokens at a pretty good discount to what I think the value is in the real world. And one option could be to just buy it and push for there to be a sale. Well, unbeknownst to me, there were already people that were thinking that same way, and that had that proposed a vote that went through. Between the time that I put that order in and the time that I actually owned tokens. And so they actually did vote to sell the property. And this is one of the things I want to talk about. So this voting process, um, there's not any real easy way to talk to the other owners. There is a Discord where you can get together. I did find out today that if you contact Lofty and let them know you've set up a Zoom meeting, a time and a link, that they'll send it out to all the owners of a particular property. I might try to start using that because I think there's some benefit to. Oh, excuse me. There's some benefit to talking to the other owners. Because what the real problem is that I wanted to talk about is that you just have a lot of. Let me exit that. You have a bunch of people who maybe have no business making real estate decisions, voting on these things, and sometimes the people proposing the votes also just a little bit less knowledgeable than you'd want them to be. And so in any case, they had a vote to sell the property, um, and then after they decided to vote to sell, we had this another proposal, which is somebody who really thought things through, um, but I think gave us a really convoluted vote, and I think that kind of skewed the results. But they said, okay, let's not. Okay, if you want to sell, that's one option, but another option is we won't sell and we'll go with this other manager, who's managing some other properties on the platform. Um, I don't know. And that's actually not this one. This one actually was talking about changing the operating reserve so that we can, so the property can cash flow. Because one of the big things is when there's no cash flow coming out, the token prices tank. But in any case, everybody said, okay, you know what, let's sell it. That was the vote that went through there. And so then I don't know who came up with these options, but somebody presented us with um, three different uh, three different real estate agents that we could potentially use. And so they did another vote. And in the vote itself is where they gave us some info about these agents, the prices those agents suggested selling it. Even the lowest priced one, I think I do okay from a liquidation perspective. But they had very wide range, anywhere from 475 all the way up to 682. And I think this one is just absolutely absurd, the 682. But then as part of that vote, let's see. Oh no, so part of the first vote, it was sell it or switch managers. Um, so they went with the sell, and so then, okay, when they picked who to use, they just went with the person that suggested the highest price. This is almost never a good idea when picking agents. This is what in our industry a lot of people would call buying a listing. It's when you just come up with some ridiculously high price and you blow everyone else out of the water, and so the owner says, oh, of course I'm going to work with you, and then later you come back and you say, oh, it looks like we were too high, we have to lower that price to actually be able to sell it. Now, whether or not that's intentional or not, I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to accuse this agent of wrongdoing. Sometimes that happens unintentionally, right? Like sometimes they just happen to have the highest one, and so they end up with it. Because their analysis was just a little bit different from everybody else's, and then they later realize, oh, maybe that's not the market. Now, it is perfectly possible that everybody else is missing something that she sees, right, and that this is a real price. But in any case, just based on the information that I read about each of the agents, and then I did a little bit of research myself online, I did not think this was a good decision, but it is what everyone went with. And it wasn't a surprise, right? Like if you have a bunch of people that don't really have very much real estate knowledge voting about what to do, picking the highest price just seems like a good decision, right? And so I wasn't surprised at all by that. We have to wait till there was a medium term tenant in the property, so we have to wait for them to move out before she do the walkthrough. And so we said, okay, that's what's going to happen. We're going to wait. Um, Once the tenant moves out, she'll walk through and then move on to doing the listing agreement. In the meantime, after that happened, somebody else proposed a vote and said, what we want to do some things here. We want to say that the owner, the listing agent has to talk to us before lowering the list price, which is a silly thing to vote on because, I mean, at least here in Texas, they can't lower the list price without us signing, an amendment to the listing agreement. So, of course they can't, right? And so it's a silly thing to put to a vote, but we voted on it, and obviously that went through. And then they talked about, we should work on setting a price that we wouldn't sell below. And I think that like it's just again, it's a weird thing to sort of say I want to have a vote on this because like any time that a price is proposed to us, we're going to vote on whether we accept it or not. And so um, that again, I mean, I'm not really sure. You know, I think this was really just someone who didn't, who's got a big chunk of money in it and maybe bought their tokens at $50, and so they are looking to lose money on a sale, and maybe just trying to make it a little bit more difficult to sell. But then the third one is they said, we want to continue to operate it as an Airbnb while it's listed against the realtor's recommendation. So the realtor specifically said, I think you shouldn't continue having it listed. We should list it after. Um, if this is the first video you're watching of me, you probably don't realize this, but I am the real estate guru, right? That's supposed to be a little bit funny, but I've been a real estate investor for 20 years, but my day job is working as an agent, only working with investors. And so I've sold a whole bunch of short-term rentals, midterm rentals, long-term rentals. It is terrible to sell one that has guests in it. And where they're doing midterm stays for this one, where people are staying a month or 2 months, it's very difficult if you have somebody who wants to show the property and you have to wait until that guest is out. It's very difficult to sell the property, but it also hurts the operations because if you do have realtors that just show up, excuse me, or buyers that just show up and want to show it, and this disturbs guests, and so it's sort of the worst of both worlds, right? Like I think if you're going to try to sell it, you just have to go all in and try to sell it. You just stop operating. Now, an exception to that, and one of the things that I just have done a little bit of is if you have an extremely successful Airbnb, or you have a property with a long-term tenant, and it makes sense as an investment for the next person to buy it as an investment. Well, then of course you can sell it and say, no, there's people in there, it's generating money. You're buying it for that reason. But this property has not been performing well as an investment, and the most likely buyer is not another Airbnb operator, it's an owner occupant. And so that's somebody who wants to see the property. So it doesn't make any sense for us to do that. But anyway, the vote went through and we said, yes, we want to keep operating it, um, because, during the listing. And so the listing agent that we had picked out, really good for her. She said, you know what, if that's what you want to do, you should probably just work with a different agent because we can't accommodate that. Um, my guess is they've realized like that it's just not easy to work with owners like us where you just have people randomly voting for stuff. You don't get a quick response on anything. And we're just wanting to do something that she specifically recommended against, right? And like we're not even under contract yet. We don't have a listing agreement yet, and we're already saying, hey, we don't really want to listen to you. And so, that being the case, I completely respect the fact that she would just say, no, I don't want to. I don't want to move forward and list it with you. And so instead of so we get this information with a new governance vote that says, okay, do we not list it and do we stick with the current manager, or do we not list it and move to the new manager, or do we list it and we use this one of the two agents that they had proposed before? Now, as far as I know, we don't have any indication whether or not either of those other two agents would be willing to list it and let us keep operating it. If they did confirm that, they didn't tell us that, right? And so we might be doing another vote here where we say, okay, we want this guy Thomas to list it, and that goes through, and then we go to him and say, hey, we want you to list it, but we're going to keep running it as a short-term rental. And he's going to say no. He's going to say the same thing. I think it's possible. And so I just think this is sort of a mess the way this process is handled. There's no real communication that happens between the owners before new votes go out. And so, like, a lot of times owners are just trying to cram a bunch of information in the vote that they're putting out, because they're trying to make their case in the same thing where the vote happens. I don't know. I had actually sent an email when one of these votes came out and said, hey, I want to share this info with owners. I think, maybe they don't realize how tough it's going to be to sell a property if we're continuing to operate it. But I'd strongly recommend against it. But it doesn't look like that got sent to anybody. And so this is, it really is a mess. I think that, part of that goes away when you have a co-owner that's involved, like they do with some of the newer properties on the platform. But I don't know if you remember, if you watched my other video a couple of days ago, I bought on mogul.club, which again, I've got a link for some free money for them as well. I say free money. I mean, you have to invest on there and do, follow their stuff. And I got $50 credit, and then another 250 is supposed to be coming. But in any case, they also say you have to vote on stuff, on major issues, and I think that is, I don't know. We'll see if they have a different way of handling it. I know that the founders of Lofty understand that this is not a beautiful process. Although I think they think it's good enough at the moment, but they are working on it. I think that it is deeply flawed at the moment, and we need better tools to communicate with other owners. Although finding out that I can set up a Zoom meeting with them, I mean, maybe that's the way. Maybe that will start to work a little better. Um, but I think that figuring this process out is going to be the key to making this decentralized ownership actually work. Um, and, I've got a couple of different ideas that I'm going to try to talk to some people on the platform about and see if there are some other options. I mean, I think especially, once a decision has been made to sell the property, I think a lot of the smaller decisions, uh, it'd be much, I think everybody would be much better served if you had, one person that was just authorized to make a lot of the decisions and negotiating, um, throughout that process before, uh, without everything having to get sent out to a vote and, waiting 24 or 48 or however many hours, to respond to anything that comes up. I just see it hurting us in the long run, trying to do business in that sort of way. But we'll see. So at the end of the day, I'm still pretty happy with the purchase price that I have on this with the $35 per tokens. If they decide not to sell it and we move over and have Earl manage it, I think I'd actually be excited about that. I think we'd probably see our pricing, the token pricing. I mean, this says starting price for 48.67, but nobody's actually buying at that price. They've got all these buy orders in the 30s. This is just people wishful thinking trying to sell at these higher prices. Um, but I think that I think that the price could go up to something like that if we did, if we did see a new manager take over and do a good job, or if we end up selling it, I think that I'll be perfectly fine, even if we hit the low end of their range. So luckily on this one, I think it's just a matter of time. Although over if we're still sitting on this 6 months from now and it hasn't sold, that return on investment might not be there, right? Like it just really depends. Um, I think it's one of the things that wasn't really obvious as a problem when I went into this, and I didn't really fully understand just how. And I should have, this was definitely something I should have realized that most people aren't going to be making good decisions on here. Most people aren't going to be educated about, what the market's really like, what it's like. A lot of the people probably haven't sold investment properties before or sold active STRs or midterm rentals or anything like that. And so it should have been a little bit more obvious to me, and it wasn't. So I don't know. That I'm always surprised at what some people don't know, because I just am so immersed in this industry on a daily basis. I just sort of take some stuff for granted. But in any case, I just want to share that. I think that I'm going to do okay with this, and I am, as tokens come up that are cheap. Like as you can see, I still picked up a couple more. As they come up and they're cheap, I will buy them because I think this is still a good deal. I think it's just how we get to profitability is either liquidating it and making money there, or getting the new manager in who does a great job on his other properties and may be making some money there. I actually think there's some opportunity to do this as a rent by the room as well, because it has a lot of bedrooms. I think there's an option in there. So I think it's a well priced asset, at least from everything that I've been able to figure out. So that it's something I'm happy buying into. And remember, I know I'm always warning you about this. Just because I think it's a good deal doesn't mean you should buy it. Your risk preference might be, or your risk tolerance might be different than mine. I'm sure you're in a different financial situation, and so just because I'm buying some of it doesn't mean that you should. But at least so far on this one, I am pretty happy with the direction it's going. I'd love it if it were going that direction in a less bumpy fashion. Um, I don't know if all the little votes it's a little bit funny to me, but I think that we'll get there and hopefully make some money. But in any case, until next time, I'm just going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.